Group on Climate Change, Biodiversity and Sustainable Development. I am delighted to welcome you all to today's high-level webinar, as we will soon be addressing the role of the EU in ocean diplomacy. Before we kick off, I would like to take the opportunity to thank MEP Ms. Catherine Chabaud and her team for taking the lead with regards to hosting as well as moderating today's event. At the same time, I want to underline the delight and the honor of being joined by the European Commissioner for Environment, Oceans and Fisheries, Mr. Virginijus Sinkevicius, in what I sincerely wish is the first of many opportunities ahead. Now, prior to passing the floor to Ms. Chabaud for her opening remarks, I would just like to provide some housekeeping rules via specifically inviting our audience to send us your questions during the event. So for this purpose, you can use the Q&As box at the right of your screen, choosing the All Panelists option. Within your question, please make sure to also note the speaker to whom your question is best addressed, so that on behalf of the Secretariat of the Intergroup, we can facilitate a fruitful discussion to follow. Once again, thank you all for joining us today. And without further ado, Ms. Chabaud, you have the floor. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon to everyone, and it's an honor for me to introduce this event on the role of the EU. Speakers for your participation, and to all of you who join us and are interested in this very special and important topic. I would also like to thank the EP Intergroup on Climate Change, Biodiversity and Sustainable Development, of which I co-chair the subgroup on ocean governance, for the good organization, Ilias and Regine. Thanks also to my team, Natasha and Emily. We are together for 2 hours. After my introduction, we will have a keynote address by European Commissioner for Environment, Oceans and Fisheries, Virginijus Sinkevicius. Good afternoon, Mr. Commissioner. Then the Portuguese presidency of the Council of the European Union will take the floor through its Minister of Maritime Affairs, Ricardo Serrao Santos. Good afternoon, Mr. Serrao Santos. Then we will have presentations by the European Commission, DG Mare and DG Env, followed by 4 reactions from 2 ocean ambassadors, the Belgian Sophie Mirgaud and the French Serge Segura, and 2 stakeholders, Christina Gertsch from the ICES Alliance. And many thanks, Christina, to be with us, because it's early in the morning for you. And Javier Garat from Europech. So thank you to everyone. And normally we will have time for the questions and answers. Please use the chat for that. First of all, I would like to quickly introduce myself and recall that what led to the organization of this event. I am a former journalist and sailor who has been involved in sustainable development issues, and more specifically those linked to the ocean, since I stopped sailing competitively near 20 years ago, after having completed my second round-the-road race. It is the waste I encountered at sea that is at the origin of my commitments, and I have carried out various missions over the last 20 years, in particular as ministerial delegate for the sea and the coast in France. I chose this ocean mandate as a member of the European Parliament because I am convinced that Europe is the right level to deal with many issues, especially with those related to the sea. Even if European citizens do not yet realize, and for the most part are completely unaware of it, the challenges linked to the ocean are rising to the level of our states, at the European level as well as the international level. These challenges are becoming more prominent because humanity is beginning to understand that its future is linked to the health of the ocean. As the ocean allows us to breathe, feeds us, transport for goods, and is full of energy, mineral, and genetic resources, of course, of fish. Yet the ocean is under growing pressure due to climate change, pollution, activities, etc. And because there is only one ocean into which rivers and seas flow, this subject must necessarily be addressed globally. The waste I live on the top of the mountain will eventually reach and contaminate the open sea. The CO2 emissions I emit, even in the heart of the continents, will contribute to the warming and acidification of the ocean. The ocean is thus on the agenda of international conventions or negotiations dedicated to it, regional seas conventions, negotiations on the preservation of biodiversity in the high seas, the BBNG negotiations, conferences on the Sustainable Development Goal dedicated to the ocean, SDG 14, the work of the International Maritime Organization or the Food and Agriculture Organization, to name a few. It is also on the agenda of multilateral negotiations and bodies with a broader scope, such as the Convention on Biological Diversity, which will adopt at a convention at its 15th Conference of the Parties next October, or the climate negotiations. But in both cases, the ocean is still struggling to make its voice heard. The European Union, which is the largest maritime area, if you had all the exclusive economic zones, has its own agenda, notably with the implementation of the Green Deal, the Green-Blue Deal, but is also a stakeholder in all these international negotiations. So the question is, how do we build an ocean diplomacy at 27, knowing that not all member states have the same relationship with the sea and that the topic does not interest public opinion much, or even politicians? How are the vision and positions constructed on the different themes of biodiversity, climate, mineral or genetic resources, etc.? How does DJ Marais work with DJ Anf? The EU was criticized for its lack of ambition and coordination between its representatives. In its international ocean governance of the Commission, is it planned to have a more global vision, integrating sovereignty and geostrategic issues? Shouldn't we strengthen political leadership and create a post of vice president in charge of ocean issues in the Commission? It is all those questions that I'm looking forward to hear from you. Finally, I would also like to hear you on one point, the notion of global common good. I don't know the good word in English. In French, bien commun, l'océan comme un bien commun, applied to the ocean, is gaining ground in various forums around the world, particularly among scientists. Here, we are not talking about commons. We are not talking about a legal concept, but about the benefits that the ocean gives to each of us and to the human. As a result, and in view of our pressures on the ocean, we are all individually and collectively responsible for this common good, and we must preserve it. As you may know, I myself have launched an appeal with experts from the maritime world for this notion to be recognized at international level, and we are asking for it to be included in the preamble of the future treaty on the high seas. Once again, we do not want to make it a legal instrument, but a moral, almost philosophical notion, which will resonate depending on the cultures with those who already take care of the ocean. We want to remind the whole of humanity, and in particular the states, which have been given sovereign rights in the exclusive economic zones and freedom of navigation on the high seas by the law of the sea, that we safeguard the future. Sorry, that we responsibility to preserve this global common in order to safeguard the future of the planet. France has chosen to support this notion, but what about the other member states, Portugal, Belgium? What about the European Union, which is negotiating on behalf of the 27? Thank you for listening, and I shall now hand over to Commissioner for the Environment, Oceans and Fisheries at the European Commission, Virginijus Sinkevicius, who comes from the Baltic Sea. Mr. Commissioner, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and of course, good afternoon to everyone. Dear members of the Parliament, dear Catherine, and dear Minister, dear Ricardo, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Let me first, of course, thank you, Catherine, for your kind invitation to address you today on the role of the EU in ocean diplomacy, and more generally for your support to move the ocean agenda forward within the European Parliament. Of course, I didn't miss on two concrete questions you have put in your speech. So first, I will maybe begin with my opening remarks, and then, of course, I will do my best to address as well your questions. As Commissioner for Environment, Oceans and Fisheries, this is a topic that is very dear to my heart. And if we want to move things forward, we need a constructive and close cooperation with the Parliament, with member states, and with all key stakeholders. And I'm very happy to be with you today and would like to give you some insight into the state of play of our current main work on international ocean governance, that is the BBNJ negotiations, the preparation of the biodiversity COP and the climate COP later this year, as well as our policy with regard to the Antarctic and the Arctic. However, before doing so, let me first say just a few more general words on our overarching international ocean governance agenda. Our objective here is clear. We want to leave the next generation with a healthy, safe, and sustainably managed ocean. This is reflected in countless commitments, not least Sustainable Development Goal 14 on the conservation and sustainable use of the ocean, seas, and marine resources for sustainable development. We all know that ambitious domestic action alone is not enough to achieve these goals. It requires shared responsibilities, collective resolve, and coordinated action at regional and international level. The EU has been taking a leadership role in these efforts for some years now. We were the first economy in the world to develop an international ocean governance agenda back in 2016. This agenda helped us shaped a more integrated approach to the ocean through a set of 50 actions under 3 headlines priorities to improve the international framework for the protection and the use of the ocean, to reduce pressure and enable the development of a sustainable blue economy, and of course to strengthen ocean research and data. 5 years later, we can look back on a number of successes. For instance, at international level, we have brought our full diplomatic clout to bear in key processes, such as the negotiation of the new Arctic high seas fisheries agreement. We have engaged 590 million euro to bolster the capacity of partner countries and organizations to monitor the oceans, conserve marine biodiversity, and eliminate illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing. And every year since 2014, we have promoted the establishment of new and well-managed marine protected area networks, such as the transatlantic MPA network, which brings together MPA managers from around the Atlantic Rim, who come from North America, South America, Africa, and of course Europe. And yet, as each of us here knows only too well, deep-rooted problems remain: pollution, climate change, unsustainable resource use, and biodiversity loss, to name but a few. Since the current College of Commissioners took office in late 2019, we have taken firm action under the European Green Deal by stepping up our commitment to sustainable and science-based fisheries management, as well as through our biodiversity and farm-to-fork strategies, among other actions. But this commitment to stepping up our action does not stop at the European border. As European Commissioner, I have also worked to reflect this in our international ocean governance work. Over the past year, my services and those of the High Representative Vice President have consulted broadly to assess if our international ocean governance agenda remains fit for purpose, engaging with actors from Europe and beyond. And I want to take this opportunity to thank you, Catherine, and many others who may listen in today for their active contribution in this process. The outcome of this consultation process was presented yesterday at the closing event of the International Ocean Governance Forum, list acknowledging the strong action of the EU on ocean governance. It gave a clear signal that the EU's approach to ocean governance needs to be updated to ensure our continued leadership in achieving global sustainability objectives. Specifically, the forum's recommendation called for us to put more emphasis on ensuring a clean, healthy, productive, resilient, and of course understood ocean. We will now take this recommendation back to the drawing board and expect to be in a position to formally update our ocean agenda next year. In the meantime, we will continue to listen to views and ideas, including at this event today. But let me now turn to some of the key international negotiations and forums we are currently working on. And I will start with the negotiations on the new High Seas Treaty, so-called BBNJ. These negotiations provide us with a once-in-a-generation opportunity to establish a strong legal framework for the management of human activities in the high seas. If we succeed, it will be one of the most significant achievements of our time in ocean governance. For this reason, these negotiations are a key priority for me, and together with the member states, I have invested particular efforts in this process. In November, I launched at the Paris Peace Forum the idea of high-level ambition coalition to give a decisive push to the negotiations. And as we are getting closer to the last negotiation session, I'm ready to give concrete expression to this idea. In the meantime, my services are working relentlessly and getting prepared for the 4th session of the Intergovernmental Forum that is scheduled for August, if conditions allow, of course. Together with the member states, we have used the unexpectedly extended intersessional period to drive our messages, including through participation in dialogues organized by the President of the Intergovernmental Conference, Ambassador Lee, by the High Seas Alliance, and by others. We have also deepened our exchanges with other delegations, refining our understanding of others' positions and testing ideas that could possibly contribute to resolving outstanding issues. But virtual exchanges cannot replace actual negotiations, and we await with hope confirmation that the August Intergovernmental Conference will go ahead. Now, moving from the BBNJ, let me turn to the 15th Conference of the Parties to the Convention on Biological Diversity, which is planned in October in China. We are pushing to ensure that the oceans and the conservation and sustainable use of the resources get attention they deserve in these discussions. As announced in the EU Biodiversity Strategy, we intend to play a leading role towards the adoption of an ambitious post-2020 global biodiversity framework. In particular, we want to see realistic, measurable, and time-bound targets which achieve on biodiversity loss what has been done with the 1.5 degrees target for climate change. And as President von der Leyen clearly stated at the One Planet Summit earlier this year, we must aim at nothing less than a Paris-style agreement. As we build towards the conference, we are working to galvanize support at the highest political level among our partners, stakeholders, and of course the wider public. As regards the ocean specifically, We'll work to move our international partners towards more biodiversity-friendly fisheries and to bring on board the international community in a joint effort to address the drivers of marine biodiversity loss. But also there is another very important COP coming down the tracks, the 26th UN Climate Change Conference of the parties due to take place in Glasgow in November. The oceans and climate nexus is an integral part of our ocean governance agenda, as well as of the broader European Green Deal. We know too well that climate change weakens the ability of the ocean to provide critical ecosystem services such as carbon storage or to support nature-based solutions to climate change adaptation. Strongly reduced greenhouse gas emissions need to be coupled with sustained and robust adaptation actions. In this respect, we recently adopted our new climate adaptation strategy, which takes into consideration the ocean dimension, including fisheries. At the international level, we believe that the silos need to be broken too. The ocean is part of the climate debate and vice versa. And as John Kerry put it yesterday in his video message to the International Ocean Governance Forum, we cannot address climate without the power of the ocean. We will therefore continue to engage constructively on this front ahead of and at the upcoming COP26 in Glasgow. We hope to achieve an ambitious and shared outcome for ocean climate action. Now, let me turn to the Antarctic and the Arctic. These two regions are of critical importance for our international ocean governance agenda because, as well as we all know, what happens in the Arctic and Antarctic does not stay in the Arctic and Antarctic. Let me start with the Antarctic. We remain convinced that we need to act as soon as possible to conserve the unique biodiversity and ecosystems of this region for present and future generation. A key element of the EU's biodiversity strategy and a priority for the Commission is to secure the designation of two large-scale marine protected areas in the Southern Ocean, one in the East Antarctica and another in the Weddell Sea. The EU and its member states have submitted these proposals to the Commission for the Conservation of Antarctic Marine Living Resources. We have been joined by Australia, Norway, Uruguay, and the UK as co-sponsor for both. Unfortunately, two countries continue to block the adoption of these proposals over concerns that they may affect their fisheries interests. We are therefore continuing our outreach efforts to both countries. In parallel, we are reaching out to potential new co-sponsors to increase the support behind our proposals. And I will be hosting a high-level ministerial meeting in a week's time on the 28th of April with the current co-sponsors and potential new co-sponsors. I'll be joined by member states at the meeting, and I'm looking forward, of course, to a very fruitful discussion. Arctic. Moving from one pole to another, I want to tell you as well about our work update, the EU Arctic policy. The dramatic impact of climate change on the Arctic region, as well as the growing geopolitical interest in the region, make it an appropriate time to reflect on the EU's own engagement in this region. The EU needs to be at the forefront with a clear and coherent Arctic policy to tackle the challenges ahead. To that end, the Commission conducted a public consultation last year, and High Representative Vice President Borrell and myself are now preparing a joint communication for adoption in autumn. And whilst we are on the Arctic, it would be remiss if I did not mention the noteworthy success of the signing of the Arctic High Seas Fisheries Agreement in 2018. This new agreement will follow a precautionary approach. Once it has entered into force, it will ban unregulated commercial fishing for an initial period of 16 years. In parallel, a joint scientific program is to be set to learn more about the unique ecosystems of the area, including fish stocks. And the Commission will remain actively engaged in the preparation of the agreement implementation. Before closing, let me emphasize that our ability to lead in ocean diplomacy on the international stage rests on the EU leading by example at home. As I have already mentioned, the European Green Deal, as our response to the current climate and environmental emergency, has upped the political momentum in this regard. And our determination and ambition have helped maintain pressure and trigger action within partner countries. So let me take this opportunity to say that we cannot allow our ambition to slip, and we must continue in the years to come to deliver on our commitment with ambitious actions domestically. Our credibility on the international stage rests on this. So as you can see, we have an exciting and ambitious agenda ahead of us. The challenges facing us when it comes to international ocean governance remains great, but so is our will to address them. Of course, I count on your continued close and constructive engagement as we move forward. Now, if you allow, I will address, Catherine, your two questions. First of all, on the role of the ocean in this conference. So you raise a very important issue here. And I confirm that there is still a lot to do to ensure that oceans receive the place in the political debate they deserve. Their importance for our lives, our health, our economies is so huge. This planet is covered mostly by oceans, and still we struggle to have them naturally on the policy agenda. Many of you today can probably confirm that we have to constantly raise awareness about the important role of oceans. It is still an uphill struggle, but these awareness raising process take time, and we have to be persistent and continue pushing the ocean agenda. 2021 is a year which offers us two fantastic opportunities to attract also international and broad public attention to the role of oceans with the two COPs I already mentioned. But you are absolutely right that at EU level, the conference on the future of Europe is another great opportunity to make your and our voice heard in emphasizing this crucial role of oceans. The conference will enable citizens from across Europe to share their ideas and help shape our common future. Now, on the second part of the question, as you mentioned of the ocean as a common good, I can only thank you for, of course, raising this again. This is a very important issue, which we have been discussing already since the beginning of this mandate on various occasions. And I'm well aware of your efforts to promote the concept of oceans as a common good of humanity. That was also taken up by the European Parliament in its January 2020 resolution on the COP15, and more recently in the EP resolution on marine litter. And I agree with you that it is important to acknowledge that the ocean, just as much as air, knows no border. It's a shared good, and its protection is and must be a common concern. And we have been made aware of this only recently, when we all hear the news from Japan and the intention of the Japanese government to release cooling water from Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant into the ocean from 2023. In reaction to what we heard from Japan, we have to be even more vocal and stress very clearly that we have an universal obligation for states under international law as reflected in the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea to protect and preserve the marine environment. This requires states to prevent, reduce, and control pollution, particularly the release of toxic, harmful substances, including that they take all measures necessary to ensure that activities under their jurisdiction or control are so conducted and not to cause damage by pollution to other states and their environments. So we will certainly continue to monitor the situation very closely and engage with Japan in the appropriate fora. So to come back to your initial and more broader question, I can only fully agree with you and with your idea that we are all individually and collectively responsible to preserve our oceans. But let me finish here. As I said, I truly count on your continued close and constructive engagement in our way forward. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Commissioner, for your strong leadership. And I just want to say fair winds for this big year of ocean issues. And as I understood, for the next step with the Antarctic MPS issue. Thank you very much. You won't be able to stay with us since the end, but just now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Ricardo Serrao Santos. He is the Minister of Maritime Affairs of Portugal, which holds the rotating presidency of the Council of the European Union. Ricardo, you are a former researcher on marine biodiversity and ocean ecosystems, and you were elected on the European Parliament for 2014 to 2019. As a member of the Parliament, you served in the committees on fisheries and on agriculture and rural development. So, Mr. Minister, I give you the floor. Thank you, Ricardo, to be here with us.
Thank you very much. And let me start by greeting you, our host, and the co-chair of the ocean governance in this intergroup that I praise very much, climate change, biodiversity, and sustainable development. Also, my special greetings to Commissioner Virginijus Sinkevičius. We meet virtually for one reason or another every 3 days or so. Greetings to the representatives of the 3 DGs, Mare, Environment. I'm not sure if climate is also involved, but it was in the program. And to the special invitees, I see a lot of known faces and on these participants. And in fact, this is a very strong session, given the participants that preceded me and those that follow me. With this, I also want to acknowledge the important role of this working group on ocean governance of the intergroup in bringing to the forefront such issues and the questions that, in fact, Catherine addressed. For me, it is always a pleasure to collaborate with the intergroup. I also want to greet the audience and Ilias Grampas, last but not the least. It's nice to see you, even if virtually. And I begin to say this is indeed a critical time in ocean diplomacy, both in the global and European context. And despite all the interruptions brought by COVID-19 and its consequence, the ocean agenda is advancing, and these initiatives can only fill us with optimism. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to participate in the 3rd International Ocean Governance Forum, which is organized by the European Commission. It is a process that is shaping ocean governance and that highlights the significance that the European Union is increasingly giving to ocean diplomacy. In a very welcome coincidence, that initiative is symbolized by a helm wheel. It is the same image that we choose for our Portuguese presidency logo. And this is also a device that Catherine Chabaud, our host, knows well, that enabling her to control the sailing across the seas that she did. In Portugal, ocean diplomacy has been one of our priorities. Portugal was closely engaged in promoting an autonomous sustainable development goal dedicated to the oceans, the SDG 14, and was from the beginning a strong supporter of the process of elaboration of an international legally binding instrument under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea on the conservation and sustainable use of marine biodiversity of areas beyond national jurisdiction, following the Rio Plus 20 document, The Future We Want. Likewise, Portugal is very supportive and engaged in the regular process for global reporting and assessment of the state of the marine environment, including socioeconomic aspects, and this can not taken out. We don't have justice, environmental justice, if you don't have social justice, of course. And whose second report is launched precisely today, officially launched. And before addressing issues regarding the Portuguese presidency of the European Union, anchored in all this process that I mentioned, I would also like to add another area of ocean diplomacy that is increasingly important: ocean science diplomacy. The integration between science and diplomacy is critical when addressing ocean policies that are, on one side, global in their nature, and on the other, imperatively science-based. Two noteworthy examples of ocean science diplomacy are the United Nations Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development and the Ocean Decade Alliance, supported by Portugal and endorsed by the President of the Portuguese Republic, Marcelo Rebelo de Sousa, in a special address made February this year that also involved the General Secretary of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, the General Director of UNESCO, Audrey Azoulay, the President of Kenya, the Prime Minister of Norway, the Prince of Monaco, and many others that were key speakers in the conference of Brave, entitled A Brave New Ocean. The Portuguese presidency of the Council of the European Union draws directly from all these kinds of development. The goals of the Portuguese presidents aim for an Europe that is resilient, green, digital, social, and global. And I say green is also blue, of course. The sea is critical for the economic recovery, either in the role that fisheries have in Europe or in the importance of blue economy. It is mandatory for a truly green, sustainable Europe, where the climate agenda is of paramount significance. It is part of a digital Europe, crossing cut every sector and every activity, from the more traditional to the most innovative ones. And it is intertwined in the social fabric of Europe, linking not only fishing communities, but connecting European citizens. Finally, the ocean is by default and by its own physical nature a symbol of global Europe, connecting us to the world, and the importance and impact that ocean policy has. Our vision for the presidency is focused in two main areas. One is fisheries and the conservation and sustainable use of marine biodiversity. And second, the integrated maritime policy. I would also mention the sustainable fish and food sea production in connection with the farm to fork strategy linked to the European Green Deal. The strategy is named FARM, and farmed seafood can in fact help in lowering the carbon footprint, but seafood and sea products in general play an important role in creating sustainable food systems in the European Union. Regarding the common fisheries policy, we continue to support the development of the policy in line with SDG 14, where sustainability and equity for European fish communities go hand in hand, always grounded on solid scientific knowledge. This means improving financing instruments and funds, effective monitoring, control and surveillance, including the current revision of the control regulation, but also a thoughtful consideration of what is the future of the EU fisheries common policy. The pandemic and its consequence highlighted the social dimension of the policy as a pillar for coastal communities throughout the European continent and also in the outermost regions. Portugal is also working closely with member states and the Commission to approve Council conclusions on integrated maritime policy dedicated to the blue economy. The development of a strong, sustainable blue economy is key for a strong maritime Europe, including the blue biotechnology, ocean renewable energies, sustainable aquaculture, food from the sea, maritime and coastal tourism, green shipping, and surveillance technologies to the protection of the marine environment. The Council conclusions will reflect on the significance of the blue economy as part of the new Union's integrated maritime policy and on the importance of having a transformative blue agenda linked to the EU Green Deal, supported by both governance and grounded on 4 pillars: a healthy, knowledge-based, prosperous, and socially fair and equitable ocean. A healthy ocean is critical for a prosperous ocean founded on solid and fairness. To achieve this, I would like to emphasize a component of the conclusions: ocean literacy, education, and knowledge. All of the process we are involved in, and certainly all of the positive outcomes of ocean diplomacy had the effect of drawing a closer attention to the ocean. And we all know that this is critical. But only with a strong, active society, we can reach the transformative process we so much need for the ocean. Finally, I would like to share some relevant events taking place in Portugal during this presidency. One is a fisheries ministerial meeting dedicated to the common fisheries policy. The other is a ministerial high-level meeting and conference on integrated maritime policy, debating the need for a strong blue agenda in the Green Deal to reinforce the process of economic and social recovery in the European Union. And I would reiterate an invitation, again directly linked with ocean diplomacy, to welcome everyone in Lisbon next year for the United Nations Conference on the for the United Nations Ocean Conference. Portugal will host the conference in Lisbon in 2022, co-organized with Kenya, and I'm confident that we will take ocean diplomacy to a new level, conveying the global message that without protection and strong knowledge, we cannot have oceans that thrive, bringing development and social equality. Thank you very much. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you very much, Ricardo. And I think you can already take into account my presence in 2022. And if it's possible, I will come with my boat in Lisbon.
Okay,
which is
I will join you. I will receive you in the marina in Lisbon.
Great.
Okay, but I hope to see you before that, maybe in June on this conference that we are.
I hope so. Maybe in June, of course. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
You stay with us.
Yeah, I stay. Yeah. I will go without image and mute as you advise. Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay. Pleasure to meet you also, Virginius. Thank you. Bye.
So now we switch on the first panel, and I wanted at the beginning to have the three DJs concerned by ocean topics. One of those, because there are also DJ Move, each trade, etc. So we will have DJ Marais and DJ Anve, but unfortunately we won't have DJ Climate. And I think next time it will be very important to strengthen, if we want to strengthen the nexus between climate and ocean and biodiversity, to gather all the DJs on those topics in such an event. So I will give the floor to DJ Marais Marc Rihir, and after to DJ Anve Umberto Delgado Rosa. Marc Rihir, you are a senior expert on international ocean governance and law of the sea at the Directorate General of Maritime Affairs and Fisheries. You are currently involved in the work on various international ocean governance related files, including BBNJ agreement negotiations and the EU contribution to COP15 of the Convention on Biological Diversity. And Mr. Delgado Rosa, you are the Director of Natural Capital at the European Commission's Directorate General of the Environment, the DG Anve. Previously, you were Director for Mainstreaming Adaptation and Low Carbon Technology at the Directorate General of Climate Action. So you should give us a word on climate action too. Having also served as Secretary of State for the Environment and as advisor on environmental issues of state to the Prime Minister of Portugal. You are experienced in European and international environmental policy, particularly biodiversity and climate change. So you will probably speak for the GRV and DJ Climate, if it's possible. Thank you. So, Mark Richier, I'll give you the floor. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam. Good afternoon, members of Parliament, Commissioner, Minister, dear colleagues. Thank you for having taken the initiative of this event. It's good to see that the COVID pandemic has not weakened our interest in discussing this issue, and it's important to do. I think Commissioner Sinkevičius has already mentioned the 2 COP we have this year, so this is an important year for the ocean. We could also mention that there are 2 UN decades on ecosystem restoration and on ocean science that will also be launched. Actually, the pandemic has demonstrated the urgency of establishing or strengthening the cooperation mechanisms to act in ways that allow the oceans to continue to provide their services and our societies to benefit from them in a sustainable manner. 5 years ago, the EU for the first time developed an international ocean governance agenda and defined a plan of action to ensure ocean sustainability. We are currently updating this international ocean or governance agenda, taking into account, of course, the post-COVID situation, and based also on the von der Leyen Commission agenda, the European Green Deal, which constitutes our long-term strategy for sustainable growth, with clear ambitions such as climate neutrality, zero pollution, the protection and restoration of biodiversity. To enrich our reflection process, we launched the International Ocean Governance Forum in 2020, where stakeholders could share their expertise, experiences, understanding on ocean governance. And as Commissioner Sinkevičius said, this forum has now reached its conclusion. Key recommendations have been presented yesterday, and they essentially concern increased ambition to tackle climate change and biodiversity loss, mainstreaming sustainability into sectoral policymaking, paying more regulatory attention to the blue economy sectors, strengthening international cooperation, control, and enforcement, and invest more in ocean observation, in ocean science. As Mr. Minister just said, this is a very important component of our current and future strategy. These recommendations will guide us in our action, and we hope that they will constitute also a source of inspiration for others, and maybe also the starting point for new partnerships. And to make this happen, and speaking about ocean diplomacy, the EU has a full range of instruments at hand, notably to lead by example, to inspire progress, and to create a shared vision for the ocean. That's what we try to do by presenting the Green Deal, the biodiversity strategy, the Farm to Fork strategy. We want to act as a driving force in international negotiations, fora, and processes. We want to drive innovative approaches that overcome silos and strengthen synergies between sectors, and certainly that the International Ocean Governance Forum is a good example of that. We want also to support innovation and knowledge production, to build capacity and promote sustainable financing, which we try to do through our marine research program or through our cooperation program with countries. These tools, we of course use them too in the context of the negotiation on the future internationally legally binding instruments under UNCLOS on the conservation and sustainable use of marine biodiversity of areas beyond national jurisdiction. I said it, this is the famous BBNJ or High Seas Treaty. There is maybe a first important aspect to recall here. It's that the agreement under negotiation is an implementing agreement, an implementing instrument under UNCLOS. UNCLOS is and remains the constitution for the ocean. It has been a monumental achievement in the international community, the first comprehensive treaty covering almost every aspect of the uses and resources of the seas and the oceans. And this is an instrument that has successfully accommodated the competing interests of all nations. So its integrity needs to be maintained. Therefore, the goal of the BBNJ instrument is not to repeat or to reinvent UNCLOS. It's to operationalize its provisions by establishing mechanisms that can facilitate cooperation, coordination, and synergies among the many actors having an interest, and sometimes, we must say it, also competing mandates and priorities in the high seas. This to allow a more holistic, integrated ocean management to achieve our conservation and sustainable use objectives. Our success in this endeavor will be judged by the final design of the agreement and whether all states will participate in it. These negotiations are complex, as delegations do not always share a common vision on the content of the future instrument. In the discussion on marine genetic resources, for instance, we aim to develop a cost-effective mechanism for the sharing of the benefits arising from these resources that will not hamper access to the resources nor create burdensome procedures that might discourage scientific research. In the view of the EU and its member states, these benefits should focus on the promotion of scientific research cooperation through the sharing of samples and data and through capacity building. With regard to area-based management tools and marine protected areas, we are working on mechanisms to create globally recognized marine protected areas outside national jurisdiction. This will, of course, be instrumental to achieve the ambitious targets that we would like to see reflected in the future post-2020 global biodiversity framework. But this has, of course, to be done building on and respecting the mandates and expertise of the many existing international, regional, and sectoral organizations and instruments, which actually reveals to be a particularly complex challenge. It seems, however, to us that the solution rests in inclusive consultation mechanisms and enhanced coordination and cooperation at an early stage with all relevant actors to enhance global and regional coherence. In the part on environmental impact assessment, a first priority for the EU and its member states is establishing a procedure with clear steps that states will need to follow when conducting an environmental assessment for IC's activities. Such a procedure should ensure that the harmful effects on marine biodiversity of planned activities are identified and taken into account. We also want states to be required to assess the cumulative impacts of an activity, and we are in favor of including strategic environmental assessments, which enable the assessments of impacts at the scale of plans and programs. To identify and designate MPAs, to carry out environmental assessments, or to fully unravel the potential of marine genetic resources, marine scientific knowledge is critical. That is why this instrument is also very much about fostering marine scientific research. Moreover, capacity development will be essential to support all activities under the future agreement and ensure inclusiveness. There are already, of course, important provisions on capacity development in UNCLOS and many other international agreements. And once again, the major challenge here is not to reconstruct this global prescription, but to build a tangible system for capacity development, keeping in mind, of course, that we do not start from a vacuum. There are already many existing efforts by international and regional organizations and states, including the EU and its member states, that contribute to improved conservation and management of marine biodiversity. Now, of course, we need to further reflect on the types of capacities that are needed, on the mechanism to identify the needs and to respond to them. And this also raises the question of the financing, which financing mechanisms to use, which financing sources to mobilize, and how to enable the involvement of the private sectors and other stakeholders. To conclude, Madam, there is still a lot of work to do, but we really believe that the BNJ negotiation has the potential to deliver not just another layer of governance, but an effective tool to improve the implementation of coherent, sustainable, and responsible ocean policies. We will, of course, continue to use the various policies, instruments, and possibilities at our disposals to achieve the BBNJ negotiations and to further develop the international ocean governance agenda. The recommendations that results from the IOG forum are a valuable contribution to this. And of course, the exchange we are having today will also certainly nourish our ideas and inspire our action for ocean sustainability. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Richir. And I think we will have to speak again, because as you said, it's very those negotiations are very complicated, but yeah, I will be very interesting to push forward with you on those topics. Mr. Humberto Delgado Rosa, the floor is yours. Unfortunately, we are a little bit late, so but we are listening to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Merci. I would like first to thank you, MEP Catherine Chabaud, for hosting and inviting the GM to this event. Also salute Minister Serão Santos, as well as the other MEPs that are following this event and all the assistants. I'll try to be quick because I speak not only after Commissioner Singavicius, also after my colleague Marc Richir, with whom we work closely on international marine biodiversity. So I don't need to say how high in the Commission agenda is international ocean diplomacy. We actually do work hardly in all international fora to ensure a healthy, clean, safe, and sustainably managed ocean, bearing in mind, of course, that it's not only a Commission responsibility, it's a shared responsibility with all countries and stakeholders. But now this Commission does want the European Union to lead on both climate change and biodiversity loss. We have led climate change towards the Paris Agreement. We now want to lead on biodiversity loss towards an equivalent ambitious agreement to be obtained in the Convention of the Parties, the so-called COP15 of the Convention on Biological Diversity later this year in China. That's where we need to agree on a new and ambitious new deal for nature, the post-2020 global biodiversity framework. By the way, let me welcome the support from the European Parliament for this ambition, because we need to be united on ambition, and ambition for the European Union to lead means leading by example, of course. Therefore, we are developing our own European commitments as expressed in the EU Biodiversity Strategy for 2030, which I do think is the most ambitious strategy that was laid on biodiversity, and it does address also the oceans. Now, leading by example, what will it mean? It will mean strong commitments at EU level so that we can enlarge them at the global level. For instance, we have come with a commitment to have 30% of EU land and sea as marine protected areas or other effective conservation measures, with efficient management schemes, well connected as a network of MPAs, 1/3 of which should be under strict protection, where natural processes are left essentially undisturbed. We also have commitments to restore degraded ecosystems, including across seascapes, in particular where there is most potential to capture and store carbon, such as seagrass meadows, kelp forests, corals, vulnerable marine ecosystems. So there's actually, here I would signal this, there's a virtuous link, especially in marine context, between protection and strict protection and delivering restoration, because when you alleviate pressure, let's say from fishing, we are actually fostering fish nurseries that can deliver more fisheries elsewhere and allowing marine ecosystems to recover. We also have commitments on sustainable use and management of our ocean resources, for instance, stopping overfishing everywhere, reducing bycatch, and reducing impacts on seafloor integrity. And of course, we need to mainstream biodiversity considerations across all sectors, including all maritime sectors, transport, energy, mining, fisheries, etc. So in essence, I don't have a mandate to speak on behalf of DG Klima, of course, but yes, indeed, we need an holistic approach for transformative change to jointly address climate change and the biodiversity loss crisis. This is actually the spirit of the Green Deal, and it should be the spirit of our preparations for what are actually 3 COPs. There's the CBD COP15, there's also the UNFCCC COP26, and there's a COP of desertification, a bit less linked with marine issues for sure, but all this come together as addressing global sustainability. Now, I would say we are preparing for this New Deal for Nature. Preparations are ongoing. China has announced that the COP will be in October. The formal online meetings of the subsidiary bodies of the convention will be kicking off in May, and we will certainly advocate for a stronger implementation and monitoring mechanism and strengthens tools for accountability. Let me just say one word here. We all aim for a Paris-like ambition for CBD, but what was Paris for climate? It was largely an accountability system for all, and we need that for biodiversity also. We need monitoring, reporting, and verification also for biodiversity, even if it's more complex. We need measurability. So we hope in August, COVID allowing, we will have the first draft of the New Deal for Nature, and then the negotiations towards this deal, including committed actions to protect the oceans. This would be, it's unavoidable to have the oceans well covered under biodiversity, which the oceans are almost a biodiversity. So marine and coastal ecosystems should certainly be covered in this Paris-like approach to biodiversity. Now, a strong implementation of the post-2020 framework, when we get it, will boost the work under many environmental related agreements. To begin with, strong synergies with all the work on international ocean governance, and in particular, as also signaled by Commissioner Sinkevičius, the ongoing negotiations of the new international treaty and the UNCLOS to protect marine biodiversity in the high seas, where the EU delegation holds a prominent voice. Now, I would still use some words on an important point for success at CBD COP15, which is means of implementation. The EU and its member states, we have collectively lived up to the international commitment to double international biodiversity financing to developing countries. That was a commitment up to 2020. We lived up to it. Now, we will certainly need financial flows from all sources, public and private, to benefit nature and biodiversity in developing countries, including by mobilizing domestic resources. This will be a key element for success in COP15. And here I have a couple of messages which are important in the marine context. One is very clear. We still spend too much on harmful subsidies, damaging biodiversity, including subsidies to fisheries fleets that continue to overfish, or those engaged in illegal, unreported, or unregulated activities. So we need much more progress on phasing this out or reshaping such subsidies towards sustainability. Then the protection and restoration of coastal and marine ecosystems are fundamental, including for fisheries as such, but also for their role in carbon sequestration. So there's here an avenue for support from both climate and biodiversity financing, which has have a virtuous approach kicking in more nowadays, especially due to this expression, nature-based solutions that can deliver multiple benefits for biodiversity, of course, for climate change mitigation and adaptation, food security, health, and so on. I do think the link climate biodiversity is now reinforced. It is fostered by the EU ambition on climate mitigation with the agreement just reached that will require more from carbon sinks, and there are no reasons why not to tap from ocean sinks as far as we can measure them solidly. And if you look around, the UK presidency of COP26 of climate wants explicitly to do it a nature COP. There are developments under the G7 and G20 linking climate, biodiversity, land degradation. So as there's a unique opportunity coming to align climate and biodiversity, including climate financing and biodiversity financing. I will stop just by saying we all know that this window of opportunity, I would say, not only for climate, not only for biodiversity, indeed for global sustainability in general, is narrowing fast. And this new deal for nature with milestones, goals, targets, as quantified as possible, with a strong mechanism for monitoring, reporting, and verification will be crucial. I hope we will get it together with good progress on climate this year. Back to you, Madame Chabaud.
Thank you very much, Mr. Delgado Rosa. And I just want to share with you the fact that I'm trying to put the blue carbon on the to address our climate ambition. So I think we here again have some things to share on nature-based solutions. I would like to give the floor now to the reactions. And first of all, to our French ambassador in charge of the maritime negotiations at the French Ministry for Europe and Foreign Affairs. In addition to several diplomatic postings, Serge Segura has worked at the legal department of the ministry, where he has specialized in international law of the sea and polar law. In his current capacity, Mr. Segura heads the French delegation to several relevant international negotiations, such as biodiversity beyond national jurisdictions. Monsieur l'ambassadeur, the floor is yours. Merci d'être là parmi nous.
Merci, merci Catherine, and good afternoon to everyone. Mr. Commissioner, Mr. Minister, and all the audience and my colleagues, panelists. And thank you particularly to you, Catherine, for organizing with the intergroup and your working group this seminar, this discussion. The title of the meeting is The Role of the EU in Ocean Diplomacy, and I would like to give you a few information how we see this role from France, and speak a little bit specifically about the BBNJ process and how we see the negotiation developing. So the French Ministry of Foreign Affairs have realized a few years ago only, mainly during the preparation of the COP21 for the climate, that the diplomatic approach of the ocean was changing very quickly in the world. Previously, the oceans were considered in the international diplomacy as places where things were happening, always in relation with a specific situation on Earth. But with the COP21 in 2015, we saw the creation of the climate community, which put in line the relationship between climate change and the oceans. And in my country, it was time to think to the ocean, not only with a geostrategic approach, but also as a specific domain, which by itself would be a subject of the international diplomacy. The blue diplomacy was a reality, and the ocean community was born 2 years later in 2017 in New York, with the first multilateral meeting specifically dedicated to the SDG 14, Sustainable Development Goal 14. It was the first edition of the Ocean Conference. At the same time, always in 2015, was created in France the position of ambassador in charge of the oceans. And after 5 years, it became very clear for us that this was the good diplomatic approach for the ocean. And that position was divided in two complementary positions, one for the maritime challenges and the other one for the maritime negotiations. One of the most challenging negotiations in which I have been participating for already 15 years is the BBNJ process. Another one is the Ocean Conference on the SDG 14, and it is a pleasure to see the role of EU, that EU wants to play now in that meeting, which should take place in 2022 in Lisbon. That shows a different approach by EU of that meeting. I will remember that in 2017, EU kept very discreet during this meeting in the first Ocean Conference, and EU member states that participated to the meeting in New York, as France, were felt deeply that absence. So we are very happy to see a change in the EU position and a new role for EU in that negotiation. But let's concentrate on the BBNJ process. Well, many things have been already said by previous speakers on the capacity for EU to work efficiently in favor of a real multilateral governance of the ocean. Let's remind the added value of 27 member states working in the same direction, defending the same objectives and same positions. Let's remind the capacity of EU institutions to be efficient and innovative on every question put on the international agenda on the ocean. And the financial capacity of EU to work for a better governance of the ocean without leaving aside any country in the world. Let's remind also the impact of the political will of EU institutions such as Parliament, Council, Commission in favor of a better environmental governance of the ocean. The ocean diplomacy deals with some common policies of EU as fishing activities, maritime transport, but also with many issues of mixed competence. Marine environment, marine scientific research, blue economy, marine literacy, capacity building in marine field, and so on. Although internal negotiations on these issues, as they are mixed, are sometimes difficult, well, I would say, to be completely frank, often difficult, once a common position has been decided, it reaches the international negotiation agenda as the view, the proposal, the position of one of the major, if not the major, group of states in the world. In all the fields I mentioned, EU is a leader, often the leader, and it is important that EU work goes on like that with the same priorities and the same capacity and will of common action with member states. BBNJ is a good example of success, but there are always possibilities of doing things better and of using capacities of member states in a more efficient way. BBNJ is the negotiation of a treaty, a legally binding instrument that will complete the ocean governance based on the United Nations Convention on Law of the Sea. Due to the difficulties suffered today by any multilateral process, it remains the only one negotiation of a multilateral treaty in the maritime field. and I wonder if not in any field in the United Nations. So that is to underline the importance of this negotiation. That means also that, although it's not well known by public opinions and politicians, unfortunately, it is a major stone in the building of the ocean governance, and the EU plays a decisive role in it. The organization of EU work for that negotiation is remarkable because at the same time efficient, cooperative, able to go to any detailed aspect of the talks in New York. I wouldn't change anything, but I have no time to detail the specificity of that organization, complex one with different EU teams of negotiation for each chapter that Mark explained, regular technical groups, meetings of COMAR, the group of the Council on Law of the Sea, and specific meetings when we are in New York. But there is always a danger that threatens a so good organization. The opinion that EU by itself is sufficient and does not need the support, the help, the knowledge, the experience, and the international networks of member states. In EU, there are some maritime nations. France is one of them, thanks to its maritime history, its navy, its private sector acting in many economic fields at sea, its overseas territories present on every ocean in the world except the Arctic, its researchers based in many parts of the world, etc. That means that such state can bring specific views on ocean governance in general and on all aspects of it in particular as regional and thematic ones. I will end with one specific example to illustrate my words. France, at its highest political level, is promoting the notion of ocean as a global common, and Catherine spoke about it in the introduction. This notion is a notion about universal responsibility on the ocean environment, notion that we want to keep moral and political, and certainly not legal. We think that this notion should be promoted in every step to create an efficient ocean governance, including BBNJ negotiation, and we propose to include it in an alinea of the preamble of the treaty. It is nevertheless difficult today to have an internal discussion on it, although we are convinced that several member states share our view. So that's only one example of the difficulty sometimes to use the capacity of member states to be as innovative as EU in general. And I hope that giving this example in this meeting will allow us to go deeper in the discussion inside EU on such a notion. So that would be my proposal, to increase EU influence in the building of the multilateral governance of the ocean, particularly in the BBNJ situation. But I would say, to conclude in a positive way, that although some member states as France can be sometimes disappointed by the fact that their ideas are not so much discussed or used in the positions of EU in New York or in other places, in general, the role of the EU now in ocean diplomacy is a very valuable role, and I would like to see it increase more and more every year. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur l'Ambassadeur. I will switch to another ambassador, Ambassador Mirgo, Sophie Mirgo, a special envoy for the ocean at the Belgian Ministry of Environment. In this capacity, she has negotiated international marine biodiversity and sustainable development agreements within the European Union and United Nations frameworks. So, Madame Mirgo, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Catherine. And thank you for inviting me here. And I'm honored to speak after these distinguished speakers that have taken the floor before me, some of which are very dear colleagues. I will make 3 points in this reaction to what we heard before. The first one will be on the concept of the year of the ocean. The second one will be on EU diplomacy in practice in the field. And the third one will be on the notion of global commons, as you have introduced to this panel. So first, the Year of the Ocean. I remember that I was at the Climate COP in Madrid in December 2019, and we had a panel discussion about the ocean. And I remember putting in my little PowerPoint, 2020 Year of the Ocean. Of course, things went a little bit differently than we expected. But the benefit is that now we have years of the ocean. So we have at least 2 years, maybe 3, in which we have the ability to really deliver something very good. And I agree with, in particular, I think it was Marc and Serge who said that we are at a pivotal moment and we really have the opportunity to do a once-in-a-lifetime negotiation that will be of utmost importance. And that is this famous or infamous BBNJ process, this BBNJ negotiation. And the link is very clear to another achievement that we can reach in the year 2021 or 2000, no, let's say 2021, let's be optimistic. And that is this this ability that we have to have strong goals for the ocean, the 30 by 30 goal. And we need one to be able to do the other. We need the BBNJ treaty to set up a mechanism to create marine protected areas. And then we need the CBD incentive, the CBD goal to be able to have something to reach towards once we have the BBNJ agreement. So they are really intrinsically linked, and they make this a unique moment in time to do EU or to do ocean negotiations and to be part of the EU team on that. It's the Year of the Ocean, and a number of informal alliances are being formed. Like Belgium, for example, is part of a Blue Leaders Alliance, and we are pushing for those 2 goals: the BBNJ agreement to be finalized, and then a 30% highly and fully protected areas goal for the ocean. And we are seeing increased interest for this, even from the public, even from we get questions from the public, we get questions from our Belgian parliament on this. So we feel like there is a momentum that we are building and that keeps increasing. And this is actually quite encouraging in a year where we have been thinking about human health, actually, or 2 years that we've been thinking about human health, but how we feel that the notion of human health being connected to the health of the planet is more and more present in the minds of all. So now I'm coming to my second point, which is the EU diplomacy in practice. Serge has already hinted at this, at how we work, and Marc has explained sort of what our position, our EU models, our ideas are for example, the BBNJ agreement. And I can only confirm that this is the product of long and intense discussions within the EU. And I have to say that I find that in the working groups that we are discussing these issues in the EU, I find tremendous enthusiasm from a very great number of states, even landlocked states. And it's clear that landlocked states have an interest in the ocean as well. But this is very prominent. I think there's a very good working relationship in these groups. I can honestly say that we have become friends, many of us, because we have been working for such a long time on these issues and with such enthusiasm that really motivates me to continue, and should motivate all of us as an EU to see that we have everybody on board with this idea, with this ambition that we have. The EU is also seen in a number of these negotiations, and in particular BBNJ, as having the keys to be a bridge builder. We talk to all and we have points in common with all, and at the same time we have the responsibility, I would call it, to not lower our ambition for that matter. Bridge builder, in my opinion, and in the role that we have created for ourselves in the BBNJ negotiation, is not that of taking the lowest common denominator. It's that to take all on board and to elevate all to the highest possible level of ambition that we need for our planet and for our ocean. And we really do have those keys, and we use them now in this intercessional period The commissioner actually mentioned the high seas dialogues, which are informal dialogues online that we're having with people from all around the world, BBNJ negotiators from all around the world. And Belgium is actually one of the ones that are taking the initiative together with, for example, the High Seas Alliance, but also Costa Rica and Monaco. And these have had tremendous success, and it shows this willingness to form alliances. And I feel that this is really where lies the answer, or the tool to get to the end of this negotiation, to continue to form these informal alliances, and to be able to listen to others, to incorporate into this joint project that is this BBNJ agreement, the ideas of all, but to elevate this up to the highest level of ambition that we proclaim. We proclaim it everywhere, and we have the power to live up to that prospect, or to that promise. Finally, on the notion of global commons, I agree with Serge that sometimes we get ourselves into a position where we are finally so happy to have reached an EU common position that we don't dare to open our horizon to something else. And I think we should do that, because I think that there, in this creativity, we will be able to open up even to getting more on board. And the notion of global commons might actually be one of those necessary steps to open up this negotiation. And I think it's intrinsically linked to something that the commissioner hinted at as well, that we need to protect and preserve our planet, our ocean, for the future generations. And I'm thinking in particular of the future generation, of our children. And when my children, when you ask them what mommy does for a living, they will say mommy saves sharks. And unfortunately, our job is not as let's say, heroic as literally going to save sharks. But I feel that we should not underestimate the power that we have as an EU, as EU negotiators, as member state negotiators working in this EU team, to make a difference. And I'm hoping to leave you here with, or to open the rest of the discussion with this positive message, that we should not underestimate the power that we do have.
Great, thank you very much, Sophie Mirgo. And now I'm very honored to invite Christina Gurge, and thank you so much, Christina, to be with us. You are a senior high seas advisor at the Global Marine and Polar Program of the International Union of the Conservation of Nature, the IUCN. And we will have the International Congress of the IUCN this year also. And you are also a member of the steering committee of the High Seas Alliance. You are well known as an expert in ocean governance, specializing on the high seas and deep ocean beyond national jurisdictions. And you have been closely following and supporting the BBNJ negotiation process. So thank you very much, Christina. You heard what we all have said from the other part of the other side of the Atlantic. You lived in the Massachusetts. So how do you see EU from the Massachusetts? And I would like just to hear about what you want to share with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It is indeed an honor to be here with you today to share some thoughts. I did prepare a PowerPoint presentation because I had eye surgery last week and my eyes are feeling a little bit tired here. So I'm hoping you don't mind looking at the visuals of the PowerPoint presentation. And I'm assuming that is on right now, if I'm correct. Can you see the presentation?
Not for instance, but I think it will come, and thank you very much. If you are, I hope your screen is not so bad for your eyes.
Okay, that's yes, I believe that's on.
Great. We see, yeah.
Okay,
We
fine.
can see the screen.
That's so yes, I've been listening and I've been quite excited about all that I've been hearing both today from the Commissioner and the DG Mari and DG Environment, as well as our Minister for the Sea and our ambassadors for the sea, all about what the European Union and its member states have contributed and can continue to contribute to ocean governance. We truly are an exciting time. Our scientific technologies have given us the opportunity to go to uncharted depths and to discover new creatures like the siphonophore that I'm hoping you're seeing, that is 40 meters in length. It is the longest creature on the planet, longer than a blue whale. That was, this creature only survives through independence as well as interdependence. It's a colonial creature. It's not one brain controlled, but each part of it has its own specific role to play. But it's only through international cooperation and interconnected cooperation that it can in fact survive. And I think it's a very good symbol for today when we are confronted by an increasing world of volatility, uncertainty, ambiguity, and complexity. And our colleagues, especially in this time of COVID-19 and now COVID 2021, that our world has really been turning topsy-turvy, but we've also proven to ourselves that we can adapt, that we can respond with courage and conviction. And this is really what we need to embody in all aspects of European Union in global ocean governance, and indeed what we need all states to do in this time of uncertainty, volatility, change, complexity, is to respond with added and equal measures of vision, understanding, courage, and adaptability. We need, as this creature here, the octopus, is to exercise this vision, understanding, courage, and adaptability. And the octopus is a very good symbol of courage and adaptability because it can blend in with the environment, but it can also exercise bold and audacious maneuvers. And this is what we really need the European Union to step up to at this time. I was heartened to hear the rollout of the proposals for the International Ocean Governance Agenda. And I can only compliment on the teamwork that has gone into actually putting together those thoughts. I'd also like to thank the European Union and its member states for their bold courage and audacity in the context of the areas beyond national jurisdiction, where some of us have been working on this issue for many, many years, going on decades now. I can recall that the European Union was the first to actually propose a new international agreement under UNCLOS for the conservation and sustainable use of marine biodiversity in ABNJ back in 2005. That was, it was the European Union joining forces with the group of 77 plus China, the 133 developing countries, to forge a bold vision for conservation and sustainable use, but also equity and capacity building and solidarity through benefit sharing of marine genetic resources, as well as capacity building and transfer of marine technology. We are dealing with a package deal, and all four components, as well as a structure at the top, a head, really need to be provided for if we are to have a beneficial future for all as we go forward. So I'd like to focus on three particular issues, all starting with the letter I, because I've now newly appreciated the value of having multiple I's, as having one is quite a challenge. So the first is really integration. That was, we need the shared vision of a healthy, productive, and resilient ocean that we agreed to in 2012 in Rio +20. And it was heartening to see yesterday that it really was all European Union Commission's hands on deck. but we need the European Union to be out in the bold forefront of ensuring that the shared vision is shared throughout all of its ministries, its directorates, areas, as well as promote this within its member states and the international community. We need an all hands on deck, just as climate change is an emergency and it's now a whole of government mandate in the United States. We hope the European Union can do the same. At the same time, the BBNJ agreement offers the opportunity to establish both systematically and effectively protected marine protected areas, of course, covering at least 30% of the marine environment. But these need to be established through processes that operate under the mandate and objective of effective protection of nature and associated ecosystem services. If you're battling about the objectives of each and every marine protected area, you'll continue to battle about the management measures needed to achieve the nebulous objectives. We need firm, concrete objectives of highly and fully protected marine areas if we're actually going to get a system of marine protected areas in place by 2030. At the same time, marine protected areas and of course other area-based management tools need to be integrated into a much larger system and vision of ocean sustainability, ecological sustainability. For that, we need strong, robust, and globally standardized provisions for environmental impact assessments and strategic environmental assessments. These need to raise the bar for both ensuring that activities that are allowed to go forward do not cause significant adverse impacts, and also ensure full consultation and transparency with all affected stakeholders, and that includes the global community. There's nobody who is not affected by what goes on in the high seas. It also includes, if we're going to be truly integrating ecological sustainability, I would also encourage an added step of ongoing regional ecological assessments of the state of health, the socio and economic aspects. Just like the global integrated assessment, we need regional and cross-sectoral integrated assessments that are followed up by strategic action plans and strategic action programs to actually drive through these goals. And these need to be driven by the higher level objectives of the BBNJ agreement for global ocean health, productivity, resilience, as well as understanding. That was inclusivity. I added this note because we're really talking about equity and sustainability and sharing of the benefits of a healthy, productive, and resilient ocean. And we're looking at intra and intergenerational equity. So concern for the present generations really needs to become in the context of a partnership and stewardship. We are all in this together. We only can live on this one ship of planet Earth. And hence that does require significant and ongoing sustained commitment from the European Union, its member states, as well as all states who can afford it, to support these partnerships in a coherent and rational way to enable all states to contribute, participate, and benefit from ocean resources, ocean health, and the many services it provides. At the same time, if we look into the future, it's very impressive to see what Portugal, Belgium, and France have already done in terms of creating ministries for the sea and ambassadors for the ocean. I would encourage the European Union to forge that position much more strongly, and to, of course, we see this in Commissioner Vinicius, who's doing an amazing job. But if we could have all states appoint ministers of the sea, ambassadors for the ocean in multilateral diplomacy, wouldn't we all have a new voice for the ocean? At the same time, in international arena, wouldn't it be nice if the European Union could consider requesting the Secretary General of the United Nations to similarly appoint an ambassador for the ocean? We have Ambassador Peter Thompson right now as the envoy for the ocean. His focus is largely on SDG 14. I would love personally someone focused who lives, breathes, and exudes enthusiasm for implementing this BB&J agreement, for speaking up for the voiceless creatures that we share this planet with, and speaking up with the future generations that we share this global ocean with and the resources. The 6th, 7th, and 8th components that I would like to focus on circle around the informed and timely decision-making. And this really pervades all aspects of governance, global ocean governance, both for areas beyond national jurisdiction, but also in the context of global climate change and global biodiversity. We need the capacity to continuously observe, monitor, and assess the state of the planet, the state of the ocean, the state of biodiversity, the health of ecosystems and species. This information needs to be streamlined to inform decision-making processes. But the decision-making processes that we have currently in many regional organizations, global organizations, based solely on consensus or a feeling that consensus is obligatory, are effectively blocking action today. We've seen this, if I may be polite or impolitic, is in Kandahar in the Southern Ocean, where dedicated scientists and states have been working to develop a network of MPAs since 2003. We're still at the point of only having 2 marine protected areas in the Southern Ocean. We need a process that is quick, that is responsive and timely, and again goes back to this need for a mandate. These MPAs need to be effectively protected. That needs to be a given. Our discussion needs to focus on how best to achieve that. And of course, the trust but verify goes back to, I think, President Reagan or perhaps President Eisenhower, who was the first to say we can use our space-based assets to better monitor what is going on land and at sea in order to ensure that activities and commitments are being carried out. We need those sorts of compliance mechanisms built into the BB&J agreement. So wrapping it up, the question is, how can the European Union and its member states best manifest vision, understanding, courage, and adaptability in the context of the BB&J agreement and wider global ocean governance? For that, I would really encourage 100% ambition for integration, inclusivity, and informed decision-making, putting the resources of the European Union at the heart and at the soul of what we want for the future of our planet, for humans as well as those we share the planet with. So thank you very much. I'm hoping that together we can build a firm foundation for truly effective, inclusive, and informed global governance. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, Christina, and thank you, because we discovered a lot of things. What was the name of the animal you show us at the beginning?
That is a siphonophore. It's a jelly-type creature, Cnidarian, mainly water. Oh, I see Minister Ricardo would like to add to the knowledge here, please.
Yeah. Did you know that this animal, Ricardo, did you know it? You can put your...
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. So stay with us, and our last speaker is Javier Garrat. Javier Garrat, sorry if I don't pronounce your name as I should. Javier Garrat, you are president of Europesh, the Association of National Organizations of Fishing Enterprises in the European Union. This work, in your work, you has been as a president of Europesh. You seeks to promote responsible and sustainable fishing practices that ensure a healthy marine environment while being attentive to the social and economic aspects of the fishing sector. Mr. Garrat, the floor is yours. Thank you. And we have to finish at 4 o'clock, and we will have a short conclusion. Just 1 or 2 questions to our people who are with us. We are about 122 now. We were 140. So thank you, Mr. Garrett, to take the floor.
Thank you very much, Catherine, and thank you to the intergroup for the invitation. Let me start with a joke. I have seen that I have several ambassadors around. Well, let me tell you that I was appointed ambassador of the horse races in Sanlúcar de Barrameda, which is my lovely fishing town where I was born, and where every year, every summer on August, takes place the horse races in the beach. So you are all invited to attend in August to this event. Before entering into the details, let me give you 3 ideas that I would like you to keep in mind. First is that we need to keep feeding the world with seafood, the healthiest animal protein with the lowest carbon footprint in its production. And of course, we agree with the importance of the oceans. But one of the most important functions of the oceans is to continue to provide food and livelihoods and to fight malnutrition, as FAO is looking for always. The second idea is that I think that the European Union should be proud of our fishermen and the success of the common fisheries policy in the management of the different stocks, mainly in the Northeast Atlantic. And we must also be proud of our external dimension, mainly with the Sustainable Fisheries Partnership Agreements and our role in the regional fisheries management organizations. And the third idea is that we have one of the highest standards in the world relating to conservation, sustainable use of the natural resources, health, control, labor, and security issues. And this is something that we always have to take into account when we talk also about international ocean governance. The world's oceans must be seen as a space providing for food, economic resources, and leisure, just as much as an area of high biodiversity that must be preserved as much as possible, of course. And all under the pressure of climate change and the need to find new ways to manage our changing oceans. For that to happen, it is imperative that the different actors develop tools for cooperative and coordinated actions, since the different and coordinated and often contradictory initiatives only dissipate the effort of the international community to tackle these challenges. One example worth mentioning is the lack of effective collaboration between sustainable use and conservation communities. Conservation and sustainable use are different measures that require different approaches. Often, this was translated into the creation of institutions with different mandates and in the development of policies involving different stakeholders. When it comes to the marine environment, such a trend can be seen, for instance, at international level with the Convention of Biological Diversity, the CBD, and the FAO, or at regional level with the regional fisheries management organizations and the regional CEST conventions. And third, at sectoral level, with different actors being consulted in silos for the development of conservation and sustainable use policies. At the international level, dialogues need to be increased between CBD and FAO. I know that they are working together, they are trying to improve their dialogue and the relationship, but there are two institutions that have different mandates, yet affect each other's work. Further collaboration mechanisms need to be established if the effective conservation and sustainable use of marine biodiversity are to be implemented. CBD has its primary objectives, both conservation and sustainable use, yet sustainable use within CBD has been talked about very differently than in the context of FAO, which is also mandated to ensure the effective and sustainable management of marine resources. This was, by the way, also highlighted by FAO throughout the negotiations on the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework, in which sustainable use is always portrayed as a threat to biodiversity. From a fisheries perspective, we think that the international ocean governance framework is quite complete. Yet we see the need to reinforce, for instance, RFMOs, capacity building, data collection, integrated responses to ocean challenges, and strive for 100% stock management of different species. All blue activities we think that should be as regulated as fishing to uphold sustainability principles. There are examples of the European Union leading on global sustainability objectives, for instance, related to SDG 14.4 through its fight against IUU fishing policy. However, an international level playing field with respect to internationally agreed sustainability standards related to trade of products is needed for the European Union and non-European Union operators and sectors. Yes, we need an international level playing field where operators from all sectors abide by the same international agreed standards for social and environmental sustainability. And this includes policy coherence between fishing and cooperation for development, health, labor, and trade aspects. We also think that we have no need for new overarching body to regulate fisheries. We already have UNCLOS. But of course, we can promote RFMOs for unregulated species and areas in high seas, for instance, small pelagics or demersal species in West Africa, or for Atlantic Southwest FAO 41. And we can, of course, support drive for new inter-RFMOs, COBE-like process in horizontal issues such as fight versus IUU fishing, transparency, fishing capacity, scientific research, ecosystem approach, etc. Concerning the Sustainable Fisheries Partnership Agreements, I think that the European Union should act as building blocks to develop coherent regional strategies, mainly in the Indian Ocean and the Atlantic Oceans. Catalyze synergies with other European Union policies, including cooperation for development, trade, MCS, help to promote transparency, and integrate social standards. If we talk about MPAs, we think that should be science-based, have clear and measurable objectives, periodical monitoring, and allow participation of all relevant stakeholders from the outset. Conservation goals designed to cover all extractive activities to protect habitats and species, not only fisheries. And to manage ocean impacts effectively, there is a need for coordinated action that includes land-based impacts through ensuring a stricter implementation of environmental, agricultural, and industrial policies, as well as action on marine policy. So it's not only fisheries policy. And then I think that we have to use, the European Union has to use the market power to counteract companies or countries that are not complying with international standards. We'll talk about IUU, custom and tax measures, or carbon border adjustment mechanism. So, but this is very important. European Union measures should not put its sustainable industry at a competitive disadvantage. At this, I would like to underline this issue. Finally, the development of conservation and sustainable use policies should include all relevant non-state actors and sectors, especially those impacting and depending on marine biodiversity. Economic sectors such as fisheries or shipping need to be involved since the very beginning of the discussions over conservation objectives, thus enabling their successful contribution to biodiversity conservation while reducing conflicts over maritime space. With regard to sustainable use, it is essential to involve the sectors concerned, but also communicate the positive outcomes that effective management has reached over the years to those actors not conventionally interested in looking at the benefits of management. Furthermore, two main dominating narratives are currently competing on the issue. While some stakeholders advocate to have a strict conservation paired with intensive use, others believe that 100% of sustainable use will be an effective solution. I include myself among them. It is to be noted that while roughly a third of all world fish stocks are overexploited, these correspond to stocks that are not managed properly or not at all. This implies that the problem is not management, but the lack thereof. This polarization of use needs to be overcome. Sustainable use and conservation are not mutually exclusive and can benefit one another. I'm finishing. Dialogue is here to be sought in tangible solutions. For example, other effective area-based conservation measures have the potential to effectively link sectors and actors by integrating conservation and sustainable use objectives. Let me finish saying that I have used for my talking points the ideas included in the Long Distance Advisory Council, a contribution to the International Ocean Governance consultation of the European Commission, and I was part of it, so I'm happy to share that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Garat. So our panel are finished. We don't have a lot of questions, just one, and we can stay a little bit longer if you don't mind. It was a question for Commissioner Sienkiewicz, but perhaps DG Mare or DG should answer. How do you, the question from Manolis Konsampatsakis, how do you envisage energy strategy? Should the EU also consider phasing out offshore drilling activities within its maritime zones? I don't know if if somebody wants to answer from the DG Mare.
Yes. Thank you very much, and thanks for these very interesting questions. I do not want to answer into the detail, but there is one thing which is for sure, because there are different aspects here that are mentioned, the drilling and the offshore wind energy. Actually, what is for sure is that there is, and there will be even more in the future, competition for the uses of the seas and the ocean. And indeed, diversification also of the activities, certain of them, like offshore wind energy, contributing also to achieve our objective in terms of climate change, but also raising concerns in terms of landscape or in terms of fisheries. So the challenge here is to accommodate the different interests, to also develop assessment of our activities, and also try to better plan the maritime space. And this is the objective of marine spatial planning, which has also, by the way, to include spaces for marine protected areas in addition to the spaces for the ocean activities. Thank you.
Okay, thank you to you. We don't have a lot of time, but just want to mention the remark of Sandra Alter. There is a third key conference in 2021 on marine biodiversity, the ICAT meeting, and we should have speak about the CEST also. So there will be, as Sophie Rigaud said, not 1 year, perhaps 2 or 3 years for the ocean. I think it's okay for the question. I don't know if somebody from our panelists wants to take the floor, and I will conclude. You can switch on your camera, put your video on if you want, because I feel a little bit alone. Thank you very much. Just want to say, to conclude, that I think I've heard, it seems to me that we have already an EU team, an ocean EU team, a small one probably, but it seems that this team is growing up, and those several conferences in the next few months will probably contribute to strengthen the European ocean governance. And when I speak about a team, is not only the Commission, inside the Commission, inside the Council, is the three institutions, and I should put also the agencies, but I think in the European Parliament, the Council, the Commission, we all are part, it seems that we all push to strengthen the ocean governance. And because we were speaking about the role of EU in ocean diplomacy, we should have an ocean ambassador, as Christina Getsch, you spoke about Peter Thompson. We should have our Peter Thompson in EU, and somewhere we are all in the same boat, and probably those different rendezvous in the next months will help us. There is an agency, you know that, and somewhere, if it would be possible, and if I can come with a boat, I will bring you on my boat. It will reinforce probably our team, yeah, when we will be all of us in Lisbon. Okay, thank you very much to all of you, and to conclude, I would like to give the floor to Ilian for the word of the intergroup, and thank you very much to all of you to share those very important topics. Fair wind.
I will be in the marina waiting for you.
Yeah, great.
Catherine, okay?
Great, thank you. And thank you to our ambassador. I don't see everybody, but thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Chabaud. Thank you. Thank you very much also to our excellent set of speakers and dear participants today. Once again, I would like to take the opportunity to thank you for taking the lead with regards to both hosting and moderating today's event. Also thank, on behalf of the Secretariat, once again, Commissioner Mr. Sinkevicius for kindly accepting, and alongside, of course, Mr. Minister, Mr. Ricardo Serrao Santos, for kindly accepting our invitation to join today's event. On this note, very happy also to have welcomed such thorough and insightful interventions, contributing to the materialization of an interesting and hopefully very impactful high-level event of the intergroup today. So very much looking forward also to continuing the discussion with you in the near future. Until then, all the best and stay safe. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ilian.
Thank you again for inviting us. It's been wonderful. I look forward to more listening and learning.
Thanks a lot. Thank you. Bye.